In previous videos, we talked about properties such as color and line type and line weight. And what I want to do now is talk about a cleaner way of handling those three properties kind of all at once. When we use the concept of layers in AutoCAD, we are able to manage all of these properties much more cleanly. The concept of layers lets us work and manage the visibility of objects in addition to the color, line type, and line weight of different objects. In an architectural environment, we can have layers for our walls and another layer for our windows and another layer for doors, another layer for window labels or door labels or room labels, just labels in general. In a mechanical environment, we might have a layer for our object lines or our visible lines, and another layer for hidden lines, and another layer for center lines, another layer for dimensions. In a civil environment, we might have layers for topography, we might have layers for buildings, we might have layers for ground to be cleared, we might have layers for equipment. There's no set standard as to what layering system might work for you. What I'm going to do is walk you through creating a very simple layering system just to show you how to do it, and you can develop your own system as to what might work in your company environment. First thing to get started is I'm going to start a brand new drawing and have it be as blank can be. So I'm going to pull down templates, and I don't like using any of these templates that come with AutoCAD. There's things kind of built into them already, even though they might appear to be a blank drawing. There's nested data in there that can kind of screw things up a little bit. So I'm just going to go into the No Template Imperial and start a brand new drawing. And now this is truly as blank can be. If we looked up here, this is our layer drop down list. And if I pull that down, you can see that there's nothing but layer 0. Layer 0 is a layer that is involved in every single every single drawing ever created with AutoCAD, and you can't get rid of it. It's a required layer. And even though it is a required layer, we don't use it. We shouldn't use that layer. As we've gone through all these different videos on how to use AutoCAD, we've not been messing around with it. We've been drawing on layer 0, but by rights we really shouldn't do that. What I'm going to do is grab the Layer Properties button, and that will open up what we refer to as a palette. And a palette is very much like a window, except that the title bar is on the left instead of across the top. And you can see our list of layer names. I can make this a little bit bigger by kind of dragging this corner out. And you can see our long list of layer names, just layer 0. To make a new layer, I just go to this New button right here and make a new layer. And it's asking me to name it. By default, it gets a name of layer 1 or whatever the next number might be that's available. And I'm going to go ahead and create a layer called Object. And I'm going to hit Enter, and I now have a layer called Object. If I hit Enter again, it lets me make a new layer right off the bat. I don't have to go back up there and pick that New button one more time. So I'll make another layer called Hidden, and then one last layer called Center. Again, just kind of setting this up as more of a line type management system that might work in a mechanical environment. And now I'm just going to pick here to kind of get out of the layer naming sequence. And what I'm going to do is go to the color column here for each one of these layers. I might yank this out a little bit, yank that header so we can see the colors. I'll leave layer 0 set to white, but I'm going to change my object layer, and I'm going to make that green. Nice and easy to see on that black background. For hidden, I'm going to change the hidden layers color to be a cyan color. Still easy to see on the background. And then finally, I'm going to change the center line layer to, I like yellow, but yellow doesn't show up very good on a layout tab. It shows fine on the model tab, but when we get into printing and see working with that white background, yellow is kind of hard to see on a white background. So I'm going to kind of go up here. Typically stay out of this area. I usually stay down here. But I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my orange colors here. Not too red, because I might use assign red to another layer. I want to easily be able to distinguish what layer an object might be on just by looking at its color. But now I've got that picked, and I'll say OK. And now I've got different colors assigned to these different layers. And if I go ahead and close up this palette, and I use this pull down menu and I make my object layer current and I draw a line, I'm automatically using that green color. If I make my hidden layer current and draw something, I'm using the color assigned to that layer. And then finally I'll make the center layer current and I'll just draw something on there, just to have 3 different object types. There we go. And there's some objects drawn on those different layers. I didn't have to mess around with this. Remember, we talked in the previous video about using this drop-down list to change color, this drop-down list to change line weight, and this drop-down list to change line type. I need you to tell me that you'll never ever touch that again, and you will only manage your object property colors, layers, and colors, line types, and line weights by layer management. We always leave these set to by layer so that whatever layer is current, that's the color that's being used to display them. Now, with that said, I'm going to go up here and go into layer management. Now let's talk about line types. And let's make our line type for the center layer, the center line type. I just have to pick in this column and center line type. Now we can see that that's not there yet, so I have to go to my load button. We did this the other day. And I'm going to scroll down and find my center line type. And as long as I'm in here, I'm going to be thinking ahead and know I need a hidden line type too. So I'll leave center highlighted, but I'm going to scroll down until hidden shows up on the screen. There it is. And I'm going to hold the control key down and pick hidden. And then they're both selected. If we scroll up, you can see that it's there and that's there. And now I say OK. And both of those line types get loaded. And now I have to pick one to be assigned to that layer. So I pick center and say OK. And then I'll go to the hidden line layer and pick that and assign the hidden line type to it. And then I'm going to leave object as continuous. And watch this. As soon as I close this up, remember our line type is set to by layer. These 2 layers now have a new line type assigned to them. So those objects are going to update automatically to show me the new line type associated with them. Okay? And then finally, in a mechanical environment, we kind of like our object lines to show up a little darker, a little heavier. So I'm going to go again into this layer properties palette and go into line weight, and I'm going to leave line weight set to default for all of these other ones, but on object I'm going to change its line weight to be a little bit thicker. Now we'll talk about some different settings in a few minutes. We've got default, but no, I can't tell what the default thickness is. We have to go in another location to find out what the default thickness is set to. But I'll just not go with that. And I typically go with like a 0.7 or a 0.6 millimeters just to have it show up a little bit thicker. And I'll say OK. And now that object is going to have a little bit heavier thickness to it. And I'll close this up. And we can't see it yet because down here our line weight realization button isn't turned on, so I'll pick that to turn it on, and then my line weight shows up. And as long as we're talking about line weights, I'm going to right click on here and pick line weight settings, and this is where we can determine what the default value is. If I look right here, the default value is 0.25 millimeters. So these two, which are default, are showing up at 1/4 of a millimeter thick, whereas this one is 0.6. And as we talked about in the previous video relating to just line weights, notice that this is still set to that couple of notches in from the left, not all the way over here. We don't want it too thick. So just for my liking, I like it set about here. That stayed set that way, even though I've closed and opened up AutoCAD quite a few times. That didn't get changed. And I'm going to say OK. And there you have it. There's how you can create layers. And in a future video, we'll talk more about controlling the visibility and how to keep from having to do this every single time I start a brand new drawing in AutoCAD. So we've got more in future videos.